Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit different from any other kind of videos that I usually make, because this video is going to be about veganism, animal rights, and why I chose to go vegan within the past year. So the reason I'm being super vague and saying within the past year is because I feel like I've been in the process of going vegan for over a year now. I'll get into that more in a minute, but first I want to give you a little bit of background as to why I even wanted to start going vegan in the first place, and kind of a history of how far I've come, and then tell you about my thought process now and why I'm officially vegan now. So by making this video, I'm not gonna suddenly become a vegan content channel. I'm also not saying that if you eat meat, if you're not vegan, you're a bad person, none of that. I feel like sometimes when people hear, I'm vegan, what they're hearing in the back of their head is, you're an asshole for not being vegan, and they go into defense mode just because the other person said they were vegan. Do you guys know what I mean? It's kind of weird. I feel like people have this knee-jerk reaction against vegans. I'm probably going to make a whole separate video about stigmas around veganism, because I just find it very interesting that since going vegan, telling people that I'm vegan kind of leads to a weird variety of reactions. Anyway, that's a topic for a whole other video. So let me just rewind a lot and kind of tell you my history with my dietary choices, especially as I started to get into the vegan zone, where that started and where I am now. So all the way back when I was about 12 years old, I think, I saw a video that many of you who are familiar with the animal rights cause might have heard of before, the video called Meet Your Meat. So that's one of those classic slaughterhouse videos that was going around for a while. I saw it so long ago now, so it's kind of easy to talk about it lightly, but when I saw it the first time around, it definitely impacted me a lot. Obviously, because when I saw it, it was one of those slaughterhouse videos. When I saw it, I obviously decided to go vegetarian then. So that was around the age of 12, and between the age of 12 and 13, it was a little bit rocky because obviously I was so young, I was still living at home. Luckily for me, my dad was a pescatarian my whole life, so I lived half the time with my dad and half the time with my mom. So the weeks spent at my dad's house, it was pretty easy to eat. I was actually a pescatarian at this point in my life, so it was pretty easy to eat a pescatarian diet at my dad's house. But then at my mom's house, there were a lot of nights where we would be having meat for dinner, and sometimes my mom would be really helpful with making vegetarian options. She especially was as I got older, but when I first went pescatarian, I feel like my family at my mom's house didn't really take it seriously, and I think that's definitely my fault as well, because I would often give in to whatever we were having for dinner. So my brother would be helping to cook taco meat. And at the time, now it grosses me out so much, but at the time, it would smell so good to me. I would be watching them make it. There wouldn't really be much other food in the house, so I would pretty easily give in to whatever meat they were eating that night. So I think I got them in the habit of believing that whatever they were cooking, even though Abby's a pescatarian, she's probably just gonna eat it anyway. So that was a rocky start for me. So for a while, I kind of had a lot of early mess-ups early on. I know that I think there was 2 Thanksgivings in a row, 2 years in a row where I cracked and ate the turkey. That's another video that would be interesting to talk about, is the sentimentality of certain foods that makes it hard to give them up. Again, a topic for a whole other video. I swear I'm not going to become a vegan channel. Also, I think part of the reason my start was a little bit rocky as well is because I wasn't very educated on the nutritional facts about going pescatarian or vegetarian or whatever. I didn't really know how to keep up with nutrition, so that was something that scared me. I had always heard that people were telling me, if you don't eat meat, you're going to be malnourished, that's really bad for you. So my mom, for a while, convinced me to bring chicken back into my diet for a little while. So that's why it's really hard to pinpoint exactly when I officially became pescatarian, because first I was pescatarian, had a lot of starts and stops, then I became vegetarian, so it's really confusing. But yeah, I think I remember bringing chicken back into my diet for a little while, but then even that started to just gross me out and I didn't want it at all. So finally, by the time I was 14 at the latest, I was officially fully pescatarian, and meat didn't even tempt me at all, but obviously I still ate dairy and I still ate seafood. So fast forward a couple of years, now I am, I believe, 17. I believe this was actually on my 17th birthday. One of my favorite foods at the time, and still is, but in a different form, I guess now. My favorite food at the time was sushi, but with fish. So I believe it was my birthday, and I remember this because we went out for sushi dinner because it was my birthday, because I love sushi so much. But I remember I was sitting there eating the sushi, whatever I was eating. I don't really actually remember what kind of sushi it was, but I remember putting it in my mouth and feeling the texture of the fish. And the fact that it was like raw fish or anything like that, that had never bothered me before. Like, I loved sushi. It's my favorite food. But suddenly I had this weird realization and this weird feeling while I was eating the fish that it just like hit me. Like, this was an animal. This animal is now dead because you were eating it, because you felt like having sushi for dinner. That sounds really dramatic. Like, when I say things like that, I'm not saying that like you should have this logic too, but that's just exactly what came over me in that moment, eating the sushi. And suddenly I just couldn't eat anymore what was on my plate. And I just stopped. And then from that point on, I just no longer wanted to eat fish anymore. And that was kind of cool in a way, because I had given up meat intentionally, and it was a little bit of a struggle early on, as I described. But then I gave up fish later on, and for the fish aspect, that kind of just came naturally, because after like applying that logic of not wanting to eat animals to like mammals for so long, suddenly it just became obvious that I wanted to apply that same logic to fish, because what's the difference? This is a really funny detail that like kind of influenced my decision to become a full vegetarian, but I totally remember like that Kurt Cobain Nirvana lyric that's like, it's okay to eat fish 'cause they don't have any feelings. I swear to God, I was such a Nirvana fangirl, Kurt Cobain fangirl, that I swear to God that influenced my decision. Even though I'm pretty sure like it's not like he was vegetarian, but for some reason that lyric made like sense to me in a way that I don't think it was even intended to, but I feel like that helped my desire to give up fish at that point in my life, because I was like, yeah, why do we treat fish differently? So, yeah. I actually gave up shellfish a little bit before the rest of the fish population, and shrimp too, which I guess counts as shellfish, because I started to see like lobsters and crabs more like living, thinking animals more quickly, I think, because I feel like a fish, it's hard to look at it and be like, yeah, that fish is having a lot of coherent thoughts. But for me, I started to see like lobsters and crabs as more sentient. So I feel like that logic applied to them first. And then I also stopped eating shrimp specifically because it horrified me that like, if you're eating a steak or something, you're eating the part of one cow. This is so dramatic, okay? But to me, I started to have this logic that it is true, honestly. It just sounds ridiculous to the average person, probably. I started to realize that when you're eating shrimp, on the other hand, you're eating many different individual shrimp. So not just one thing had to die for your meal, probably like 20 different individual living things had to die for your meal. And for some reason, having that logic, I like freaked myself out, because I was like, this is almost worse, because you're killing like a family of an animal rather than just like the one cow or something. So after a while, I finally started to see like all living things on the same playing field. And like, I don't know why that logic isn't automatic for people. I feel like it's easier for people to like connect with and associate themselves and see sentience in mammals, but for some reason it's harder to make that connection with like amphibians, maybe because they're not as like us in their makeup. So it's easier to sympathize with mammals than it is for fish and amphibians. And I can still kind of see it that way. Like, when I see a fish, I'm not like, oh my God, that fish is so cute, I want to go cuddle it. So it's not like from that kind of rooted feeling. Like, when I see any other mammal, obviously I like want to cuddle it and connect with it, but I never have the desire to make a connection with a fish. So I guess that could be why some people are like less inclined to give up eating fish, even if they go pescatarian. I almost forgot to include another big reason why I stopped eating seafood specifically is because I was reading the book Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. I can never figure out how to say his name. I feel like I'm saying it wrong. But that book is one that I totally love, and it makes amazing arguments for going vegetarian. I was already pescatarian at the point of reading this book, but then I got to a chapter about seafood and specifically industrial fishing that really enlightened me to the practices of industrial fishing that I had no idea about. I feel like when most people think about fish and how we get our fish, we think it's like the friendly farmer in his little rowboat catching like 5 fish a day. Like, hell no. The facts that I learned in that book, I think I actually cried. Like, I know some of you will think that I'm just crazy for reacting like that, but to me, it's like, I feel like if you're not reacting like that, then you're just desensitized, and I don't know, maybe that comment will annoy you. I don't want to make this video, like, the argument for going vegetarian. This video is really just going to be about like my history, and maybe I'll make an argument video down the line. But anyway, so I read this excerpt that said something like the nets they use were like miles and miles long, so if they would throw it into a school of whatever fish they were trying to catch, maybe like salmon, they were obviously catching a lot of salmon, but they were also catching a lot of what there's actually a term for called bycatch, which basically was something factored in. They factored in that they would catch lots and lots of other creatures, including seahorses, dolphins, like creatures that we typically find cute in our society, and basically fish them, and they would suffocate and die, and they would just throw them back in and like basically kill them for no reason. It wasn't like they were making a profit off of the bycatch, but it was actually like factored into the budget that they would catch all these extra creatures, but it was more profitable to do that, to catch a large amount of whatever they were trying to catch and then just throw away the excess because they didn't have any use for it. So that's absolutely horrifying to me, and that's part of the reason that I gave up seafood, is because it's not just the friendly farmer, like, just killing the one fish that you're gonna eat that day. Industrial fishing, I had no idea about. I feel like at least factory farming is well known. Industrial fishing was, like, shocking to me when I heard about it, and I just could not participate in that any longer. So for some reason, I guess my cognitive dissonance, my desensitized self, like, the part of me that was hanging on to being desensitized was the part related to dairy and eggs, like the dairy industry. And I feel like it was harder for me to make that mental connection right away, because at least if you're looking at like meat, like you're looking at a steak, you're looking at that and you're looking at the dead animal. It's really easy to make the connection between steak, cow, like it's the same thing. But I guess for me, it was harder for my brain to make the connection between like milk, cow, doesn't necessarily hurt the cow, but it hurts it indirectly. And it's like the indirectness of the harm that made it so hard for me to grasp why it's so bad to support the dairy industry. And again, I guess I won't go too into detail about that in this video, because again, that's not what it's about. But basically the reason why the dairy industry is so horrible is because the way they treat the animals is so disgusting. First of all, the milk that the cow is producing is for the calf. So to be as profitable as possible, the best thing to do is take the calf away from the mother, so the calf isn't stealing any of the milk that they want to sell, even though it's for the calf. The company wants to collect every drop of milk that they possibly can to then sell to humans to consume, even though it's for the calf. And what do they do with the calf that would otherwise be consuming the mother's milk? That's where your veal comes from. Veal, baby cow. And that's one of the absolute most horrifying things to me. Is the very direct link between the milk and dairy industry and veal, the killing of baby cows. It's one thing to eat an animal that has lived a long life, like whatever, maybe you see that as natural, but how could you possibly argue that it's natural to eat a baby animal? Like, that's appalling to me, like, so shocking. To me, it's just like, that's, desensitization, cognitive dissonance at its finest. Like, how do you make that okay in your head? How can you possibly make that okay? And again, I want to keep saying this, that I don't believe people are necessarily bad for continuing to eat meat, but I do strongly believe that if every single person was well educated and fought through, I feel like we're so trained to be desensitized to these things because we were raised eating meat and dairy. If you are able to break through that desensitization and really look at it for what it is, and really look at the horrible treatment that we subject these animals to, I feel like everyone would have to go vegan. But I feel like it's only natural to be so desensitized to it if it's such a prominent part of our society. Okay, so now moving on to the vegan part of the journey and how that came about and like why I started moving in that direction. So ever since going vegetarian, after being pescatarian for so long, I kind of in the back of my mind felt like it would be like the natural progression that I would eventually go vegan. Because like I described, when I went vegetarian, it just happened. It was like a revelation. It just happened in a second. Like, suddenly I had the realization that I no longer wanted to eat fish. It was that easy, and it really wasn't that hard for me to give it up. But for veganism, it was a different story, because even though I had that idea in the back of my head, for some reason it just seemed so daunting, because it really just seems like dairy or egg is in everything. It's in, like, most foods that you're going to get at restaurants. it's really hard to find vegan foods at restaurants. Baked goods, there's always going to be like milk and eggs, so it is honestly harder to avoid than meat, because when you're avoiding meat, it's pretty straightforward that like if you're ordering a steak, it's going to be meat. But with veganism, there's times where you really just have no idea, and like if you're at a restaurant and there's something on the menu that like seems like it might be vegan, you still really have no way of knowing 100% unless you ask the server. So it's just it is honestly a bit harder. So for a long time, I wasn't really making any moves in that direction. Sorry for like the water noises behind me. I'm sitting in front of like my furnace. I thought it was going off, but I guess not. I'm just gonna keep talking over it and hope it's not too annoying. So yeah, even though I saw the value of going vegan, for some reason even though I saw the value of going vegan, I just wasn't really like actively making moves in that direction because it did just feel so daunting, and I just honestly didn't want to deal with it. So in the back of my mind, I just kept telling myself to make myself feel better about it. Oh, someday I'll go vegan when it's easier for me, when I have a real job when I'm making more money, I'll be able to afford more vegan products. So there was just so many excuses in my head until one day I was like, okay, so if the idea of going vegan 100%, just cutting it all off all at once, like all dairy, all egg, all animal products total, if that seemed too daunting for me, then I decided, like, why not just do what I feel that I can at this time in my life? Why don't I just give up a little bit and just start small and slowly work my way up? So that's how it all began. So to some people, to some vegans, you might look at me and be like, oh, you're so weak, like, that's not how you really do it, like, do you even care about the animals? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that, like, hardcore, radical vegans might look at that and be like, oh, that's dumb. But honestly, my vegan philosophy, part of it is that people should give up what they can. And if it seems too daunting to give up everything at once, meat, dairy, then I think that it should be 100% supported by the vegan cause for people to give up what they can. Because if you start small and you give up, like, let's say you love one food, but you could do without another. Like, you love chicken, but you could do without pork. Then cool. Maybe you're not ready to go vegetarian, but give up the thing you could live without. Give up pork. Give up the things you don't really eat that often anyway, and then just once in a while indulge in the thing that you like. And that's kind of how I took it with veganism. It all kind of started with this video. If you watch this video I made on my channel almost a year ago now, maybe more, what I did was I went to the grocery store one day and I just bought a bunch of vegan alternatives to dairy products. So I bought like yogurt and mayo, and I bought, I was already buying almond milk regularly, so that was already a part of my regular grocery routine. But I also found like vegan cheese. So with that video, I tried a bunch of these vegan options, and I slowly found the ones that I could live with. Like, I found like vegan yogurt. There was a vegan yogurt brand that I actually really liked, and then from there I decided, like, hey, I don't need to buy real yogurt. I could totally just go with this vegan yogurt. So that was my kind of way of slowly cutting out individual dairy products, like, one by one. So for me, it felt too hard for me at the time to give up everything at once, but slowly I kind of like eased my way into it. So obviously I wasn't actually vegan then, because I was like giving up things slowly, but I still occasionally ate dairy, so I'm not counting like the beginning of my veganism then, but that is kind of how it started slowly. I kind of just started by educating myself, teaching myself how to do it, but still have good nutrition. And over time, the more I found... Sorry, I just had to move my filming setup drastically because I was sitting in front of my like boiler furnace or whatever was behind me in that closet, and it kept turning on and ruining the audio, so I had to just move a little bit over here. Hopefully it's not audible anymore. You know, I got a cut in my finger while trying to move my setup. Like, that's how dedicated I am to making videos. Sorry, this is like a much uglier setup. I just really want to finish this video because I'm already pretty much done. But anyway, basically, over time, I found these vegan dairy replacements that I actually liked just as much as, or even more, than some dairy products. So those were really easy to switch over to. I found that a lot of ice creams were pretty much the same, a lot of yogurts were pretty much the same. There's definitely some bad vegan yogurt, but I find that there's more good vegan yogurt than bad. Most vegan cheeses I tried early on I really did not like Daiya I hated, But then eventually I found chow, which I really, really liked. I kind of did that for pretty much a whole year, that I was slowly giving up things here and there. So pretty much all my grocery shopping at home became vegan very quickly. Like, that was really easy to switch over. The hardest part for me for a while was like going out to restaurants, or if a friend was cooking for me, or if my boyfriend at the time was cooking for me, he often used like cheese. Luckily he was vegetarian, so that made things easier. And oftentimes it was baked goods that really got me, because I freaking love baked goods. But basically I'm just trying to say that I took it very slowly. And I think that people who take this method, obviously I'm biased because I did it, but I think that people that take this method towards going vegan shouldn't be shamed for it. And I feel like that applies to vegetarianism as well. I feel like anyone who's willing to give up even a little bit of meat or dairy here and there, I'm very, very supportive of that. And I think that's great. And I think that it's really good to start small, because if sometimes for some people giving up everything at once seems really, really daunting, but giving up like a little here and there can eventually lead to giving up more and more, can eventually lead to going full vegetarian or vegan, and I think that's a great way to start if it does feel too daunting at first. So I kind of want to make a whole other video about my personal vegan philosophy, because I feel like there's a lot of different like schools of thought in like the vegan community. Sometimes I see some vegan YouTubers that I absolutely disagree with, and I think that what they do is actually turning people off from veganism more than encouraging people to go vegan. Then there are other vegan YouTubers who I love, and I love their arguments, and I love their recipes that have really, really helped me to go vegan. And a bunch of these are, The Unnatural Vegan is a YouTuber that I absolutely love. She has the most logical, intelligent arguments about veganism that I pretty much agree with everything she says, but she's not afraid to go against like the common vegan belief, I guess. So she's not afraid to like go against the grain, even if like most of the vegan community might disagree with her. I often agree with many of the things she says. Another one that I love is Sarah Sullivan, or Sarah's Vegan Kitchen on YouTube. It has amazing recipes. And then there's Cheap Lazy Vegan is another food channel that I love. Joseph Lincoln's another vegan YouTuber. His is more like, I want to say like vegan comedy. There's definitely some really good ones out there that I wish were the more popular ones, because they deserve to be, honestly. But yes, so that's where I'm at now. I would say I've been officially vegan for, I would say since August. So it's been like 4 to 5 months that I've been like officially vegan, but I was pretty much vegan. I know that doesn't count, but I was pretty much eating a 90% plant-based diet for the past year. But I would occasionally, like, if I went to a restaurant, I would occasionally make exceptions only for dairy. I haven't eaten meat since I was probably, I'll say 13. And I don't think I could ever eat it again. I feel like I'd probably get physically sick because it's been so long. But I'm definitely not interested in eating meat. And at this point, now that I've given up all dairy and I found a lot of amazing replacements for dairy, I don't find that I miss it, which is really, really good. For a while, cheese was the hardest thing, because like I said, that was the hardest to find like a good vegan replacement for, but even that, I'm finding some good ones lately, which is really exciting. But anyway, that's pretty much my whole vegetarian vegan story and how I slowly progressed from pescatarian to vegetarian to vegan. So let me know in the comments below if you're a vegetarian or a vegan or considering going vegan. It'd be really interesting to talk to you about that. I know my channel, again, doesn't usually talk about these topics, but I think I will start to make the occasional vegan video, but don't worry, I'm not going to become like 100% vegan channel or anything like that. I'm still going to make my same old videos, but it is a topic that matters to me, so I do think that it deserves a place on my channel as well. Start a discussion in the comments below, or any requests or questions that you have for me about going vegan. I'd love to answer whatever questions you have. Hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, even though this is the new thing. It'll start being a thing, or about whatever other topics I make on my channel. If you made it to the end of this incredibly long video, you're the best. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.